Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean Tobias, coming to you live from Reviv's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today. I'd like to welcome Matthew Putman, the CEO of Nanotronics, a science tech firm redefining the factory of the future with a platform that helps drive yield, reduce waste, lower costs, and speed up design across all types of industries. Hopefully we can talk about some today, like aerospace, automotive, electronics, healthcare. He's a 21st century Renaissance man. Don't hear that very often. Matthew is does a lot of stuff. He's an educator, a poet, film stage producer, and of course a leading scientist and expert about nanotech. Don't worry, we're not going to get too geeky here. But what you may not know is he's a classically trained, incredibly avant-garde jazz pianist, and often recording with the band Telepathic, which is just some really great jazz. Matthew, it's great to see you again. And from what I can tell, Nanotronics, the platform you started out was really kind of combining AI, automation, and imaging maybe to kind of detect manufacturing flaws. But as I've kind of watched you grow in Brooklyn there, it seems like you're doing much more than that. Tell us a little bit about what's going on. What are you guys really doing?
Yeah, well, thanks. Thanks so much for the nice intro. But yeah, the world has changed a lot. So I think that a lot of the things that we're seeing right now in the world, really nanotechnology, synthetic biology, and really the need to have factories be fully automated and autonomous to produce next generation just about everything has changed since we started the business, but it's always been the big goal. So doing, as you said, detection and classification of different types of defects and features was a way to start to see things that other people hadn't been able to see before, either with your eyes or with microscopes. But then there was this great convergence. Didn't
you guys develop the world's most advanced microscope in the world? Maybe not the biggest, but the most.
What we did was take something that was actually fairly common and put computation behind it to make it be able to do more than any light microscope had ever been able to do before. That is, see smaller things than light is usually capable of. And then once we were able to incorporate it with artificial intelligence, then you have something that was a fairly basic microscope being the most powerful. So it was within the reach of corporations and labs in ways that any other type of system was not.
So you basically brought AI to an old business model too. We'll talk about that in a second.
Sure.
How I don't know. I just think manufacturing in many countries is still in the 20th century, maybe the 19th. Who knows?
Oh, I think
I've seen some pretty old factories.
Yeah, I think most factories are. Even the ones that look incredibly high tech run not too dissimilarly from the way Henry Ford would run a production line, whether you're in a clean room of a semiconductor factory or you're in a tire factory. So changing that has been this sort of arc in my career over the last 30 years, but it's also been sort of it should be an inflection point for how industry changes away from a model that was good back then but could be a lot better now.
Yeah, you sound like me. You sound like you started working when you were 13, 14, 15.
Oh my God, you were old. I was 8.
8.
my father had a business.
Kind of a good father.
Started in the garage. I was running specific gravity tests on a kitchen table when I was 8 years old. But I got $1 an hour. It was pretty good for it.
Yeah, that's good for a mad scientist. So I'm on the board of a couple of manufacturing companies. Rockford, Illinois. One's 3D printing, manufacturing. The other one is a more linear motion thing, and it's old school stuff. However, they are investing heavy into robotics and smart intelligence, and so they're kind of leapfrogging because they skipped all that. In a way, maybe they saved a lot of time and money, but it seems like there's such a target market. There are just thousands of these mid-sized manufacturers. Or are you is your business model more focused on the big fat cats?
No, I guess if you even look at our early customers, they were I think the biggest emerging fields, but other companies that did either inspection or did factory control didn't focus on them. They tend to focus on your largest business because you'll get a ton of revenue from it. But we really focused on these emerging things that were these mid-size, just had just gone public or not even yet. It had a lot of financing. And now you see them becoming some of the biggest companies in the world. And then we look back and we see what are the next things like that. Because of exactly what you said. If you're building a factory from the start, or you're building a business model, it's a chance to bring us in and help design that and work on it and make it, like you said, mid 20th century, 21st century.
Yeah,
this should be the next generation. It's much harder to go into an old factory and say, get rid of everything.
Yeah.
So we try to address that in a different way, which we could talk about if you'd like to.
And a lot of these are just bending metal. They're not doing wafers. I know you've got some really
that
sexy.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, you've got some really sexy hardware that does some incredible stuff. Seems like it's very wafer focused. Whoever designed it was, obviously went to the Apple school or something. But what is your business model? Is it to sell hardware or services? More like an uptake does, AI for companies where they just crunch someone else's data, or how do you see your business model going forward now that you've gone through the first phase?
Yeah, it's changed some with time. We really were and still are for many of our customers a CapEx expense. We're selling a piece of hardware, but the power of it has always been in the software. So adapting a business model to really a software company, to me, be a software company that has a piece of hardware with it. There are some comps, historical comps. I think of things like the early Bloomberg terminals, for instance, or something like this.
Yep.
So we now are thinking of our systems not as an imaging system, but how it ties in to other controllers in a factory, and how you quantify the improvement of yields, for instance. So we sell the core product, but there's a sort of SaaS element to it. So we're updating our artificial intelligence models all of the time. So to be running the equipment and to be analyzing things, you pay an ongoing subscription to our software. And so it's now, I don't think of ourselves as a CapEx purchase as much. Now, when it comes to analytics, it's really important for our customers who care about their privacy. They care for one reason or the other. We do everything in as much local as possible. So they're running GPUs, they're doing the analysis, they're training AI pipelines, they're doing it at their factory in an air-gapped facility. And we give them a tool to be able to do that. They don't need to be, it's not a cloud service. It's actually quite the opposite. And that gives customers the comfort that they have this intact, safe environment.
Yeah, you're much more than a SaaS provider. But future-wise, you may have a whole ton of clients that are just more services than the hybrid model. Services and hardware probably would be my guess.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're working with an energy company. Well, actually, it's a water purification company that uses a biological enzyme for creating a hydrogen peroxide. It's a really cool company, and for them, they're opening a large plant, and what we're doing for them is not imaging at all. We're connected to their controllers. We're splitting it so that we can detect when there are changes in the process. We also can, make dynamic changes by using something called reinforcement learning, which was made famous by, DeepMind winning in the game of Go. But we use it for manufacturing. The game is perfect yields. So it has nothing to do with imaging.
Welcome to level 5.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. What speaking of cool, I like your little studio behind you there. That's not fake, right? Are you in a real office there?
No, we're in a real office, and we have been for the whole time. Yeah, but
I meant the microphones. It almost looks like a canvas. But do you just kind of burst in? Do you just take a break in the middle of the day and just start jamming, or?
I wish I could more. It certainly is a way to clear my mind, to get back into thinking in the moment. When you're playing jazz, so that you have no time to use a part of your brain that may be obsessed with what's going to happen next. So it certainly clears my mind. So it happens, and it's certainly I come in the morning and play before I drive people crazy. Play before going home.
Probably knowing you have a soundproof office. By the way, you guys are in some really cool digs there, aren't you? In the old Brooklyn Navy Yard
Yeah, we've been in the Navy Yards for a while, but we are now building, taking the oldest building here, but we made it into, I think, the most modern, interesting factories. They actually made some of the first submarines in the building, and now we're making our products and doing our research in there. The Navy Yards were huge, the largest manufacturing hub on the tri-state area until the 60s. And,
almost one of the top ones on the planet back in the first part of the 20th century.
Yeah, everybody you meet in Brooklyn has parents or grandparents that had worked around here. And, we hope to bring back that ecosystem a bit. It's an exciting place to be.
I like that. I like you there better than Amazon, but let's not go there. So you've kind of taken that from like wooden ships to silicon ships, it seems like, from a transformation.
That's an interesting way to say it. Yeah.
Good. You can put that above your door, maybe. The good segue into why is manufacturing so stuck in the past? Having been on a couple boards, the capex is a problem. Spending money to upgrade when, I know 3 or 4 companies in the Midwest that they know how to bend metal or refine it, or they're part of a process in a supply chain. That's all they do. Family-run companies. 100 million, not that big. Hundreds of them, like we talked about before. But so there's that category. But you see it in a lot of the big ones too. They're still using 20th century tech.
Yeah, the thing that,
or maybe no tech.
Well, no, they're using tech, but it's always add-on. I don't know if you feel this way, but it feels like we have to add a new piece at our company and a new piece of enterprise software all the time, and it just keeps building up, right? It's this sort of additive thing. It's, oh my God,
the giant hairball, Mark Benioff used to call it, but now he's created another one. It's
So we're actually trying to do the opposite, saying you don't need a lot of this equipment. You don't need to continue to make a semiconductor fab now costs $20 billion. That's what the new TSMC and the new Global Foundries and the new Samsung fab. And we're saying, it's just, with a B, $20 billion.
Wow.
And I want to challenge this idea that fabs should be able to be built for, a couple $1 million. So even though we're selling things, we're not trying to add to the budget. We're saying, get rid of all these things. You don't have to do this, because the more you add, the more potential for error in the process you add. But, when you add really strong computation, when you're getting feedback that will make a product that is, guaranteed at the end, this is a really big deal. So, why don't people change? It's artificial intelligence in a factory. It's a tool that people completely aren't used to. It's a black box in ways that people aren't used to. There's a cognitive thing that as humans, we think that we need to understand what our tools are doing, even when we don't necessarily already. We don't really know what's behind the scenes. But now we have the greatest tool ever through things like reinforcement learning that I mentioned earlier, and getting, the trust and acceptance to say we can actually build a fab for $5 million is somehow harder than saying we're going to raise the price of a fab and just buy a lot of things. So there's a real mental change that needs to happen.
So you guys kind of ushering in like the democratization of manufacturing to smaller. So that means smaller companies could run fabs that usually would be like, whoa, that's way out of my league. I can't even build a clean room. The clean room alone would be $5 million right now.
Yeah. I when we first started the company, but I said that this, and it still kind of works, that I said, I won't, I don't think the next great social network should start in a dorm. It should be a factory.
Exactly.
The dream of nanotechnology is a factory to be something like a 3D printer, but be molecularly precise. So it's like a replicator in Star Trek, right? If anybody's familiar with that. That's the goal. That's the tiny factory.
I have one right here.
Oh yeah. Oh good. Yeah. But no, that's that. So if you have that as the goal, and the end goal. I'm going to have a nano factory. It's going to be molecularly precise 3D printer. And you move down from there, factory, you at least want to have a factory right now that is, 70,000 square feet instead of, millions. And so that's the goal. And so it can be it should be big companies. We see struggles right now. If you look in the news, it's very large companies that are struggling with supply chains. They're struggling with lack of rare earth materials right now is a big deal for American companies. There's a lot going on that being able to be both decentralized, distributed, and small will take care of for big or small companies.
Yeah, we're seeing that across all types of industries. I have this program called Dancing with Startups where we help some of the largest planets, the largest companies on the planet kind of partner with startups and not just buy them, but actually to, as we would say, co-create with them. And we're seeing it in every industry, even Reviv's industry, which is health, beauty, and wellness. There is a bunch of indie brands just coming out of the woodwork getting funded. And for some reason, the large, big brand manufacturers are having a hard time figuring out how do you do clean, how do you do green, how do you do all these, non-toxic products that people want. It's a problem because they're set up for scale. I assume it's a manufacturing process, really. It's very hard for them to downscale it. So they've been buying all types of brands, whether it's a razor blade company or a beauty product or some goop. And
interesting.
Across all industries, I don't see that trend going away. I mean, you in itself are one of the Dancing with Startups partners. They're coming to you because you've got, cutting edge stuff, obviously brilliant people, a good hardware software solution, but it's just a different approach to say, whoa, why do you keep doing what you're doing? Of course, these vendors want to keep selling you hardware from Germany and software from Silicon Valley. Let us help you. So
there's a thing we do is, yeah. I mean, we make some things, we make our own robotics, we put together our own optics. And even so, we don't work at the scale that our customers do. We're selling, this CapEx equipment. Whereas if you go to a semiconductor company or a genomic sequencing company or a pharma company, that they have much larger scale, but we at least get to build something and have a little blueprint of how that works. To build something this way. We have our AI researchers looking down over the factory floor so that their models can be applied, so AI can be applied to the things we make. We tell customers, look, it can be done. We're taking the risk to do it too. And I want to continue to do that, to make things, to prove to ourselves, not just our customers, that it can be done, so that they're not taking all the risk first. We should be.
Yeah, it's a good model. Let's kind of dig into the health and wellness category. Some of the applications you see. We had Naveen Jain on a while ago. He's a friend. With
good.
So personalized medicine, or what a lot of people are just trying to do is avoid death. Maybe a better way to say it.
Sounds like a good idea right now.
Exactly. So there's extreme versions of it, and there's ones that are just more. But the whole personalization of health, beauty, wellness, whatever, all those categories. But how do you see yourself playing in that category? I know, I guess healthcare itself is one of your big segments coming up.
Well, we can think of this in two different ways. There's been a revolution that should have started many years ago and did start in research labs and even in companies, but due to either regulation or stagnation in the way that people view things, it didn't make its way to mass scale. And a good example are mRNA vaccines that we're all reliant on, and is the fastest thing going on right now. And using a lipid nanoparticle with RNA that could be programmed. The RNA can be programmed for anything. This is an example of if there's a variant, for instance, in COVID, it's really just a quick booster and a change to the RNA. You can imagine that same thing moving towards being able to do this yourself.
Right.
And that's where, so that's the really big dream. And then if you're taking your own genome, because we also work on genomic sequencing and with the largest companies in genomic sequencing, if you could do your own sequences for nearly free, you can look at the pathogen you have, you can adjust the RNA, you actually have personalized medicine. And it seemed crazy even a year ago that we'd be able to get there quickly. And now I think it's possible. So that's one area we work with those companies across that line. But then we have healthcare of how can people be comfortable in their homes and not, a big problem we've seen lately is how do you go to the hospital that's overcrowded, or that you feel you may it may be more dangerous to be in a hospital than to be sick at home. So we have this AI manufacturing ability, so we can make really whatever we want. So my father invented a breathing device that's non-invasive, non-harmful, not that that he built in his house in Florida, and then we put into our manufacturing process, and had FDA EUA approval in 90 days, and are selling these. Seems like nothing like our business, but our business is building things, and we had a procedure to scale this very quickly, and that's being sold around the world. The idea of that is keep the very small, very inexpensive breathing device in your home. If you need it, great. There's a lot of research behind it, helps with people with breathing disorders, or if you get sick and can't breathe. So it's a different part of you're at home, you have comfort, you have something for yourself. There are little examples of that in life. This is a new one, I think, and maybe we'll do others like that.
Yeah,
or encourage others to.
Sounds like a niche between COPD and like extreme lung disease, where it's like, hey, you could self-treat. But
or asthma. I mean, it's not. It's
asthma. It's a bit better. Yep. It's interesting. I love the thought of personalized medicine, and we should have started a long time ago. Viome and others are coming up with the analytics to say this is what you need. Then they have to get people to actually manufacture that at scale. That's been an issue. It seems like you can help with that. It's like, well, we can help you scale that in small doses, which is usually where the big guys go. Oh, you want me to run how many? That's like too small. So,
yeah, I mean, we're lucky right now that there are companies that have been successful during this time, like Moderna, who have more of a small startup mentality, that are now having to produce at scale. And, this is I think that they're happy to jump back and forth. I don't want to speak for them, but there are the companies that are even in the big companies, the divisions that have been doing this, even the big companies that are having divisions that are working in the synthetic biospace now are certainly will think of doing either small batches or large batches.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what happened during the 2020 lockdown pandemic, vitamin sales, supplements just went through the roof with certain people. Other people might have been alcohol, and just having some people just let go. But
I had both. But
yeah, exactly.
I'm hoping the vitamins make up for the alcohol. But
I'm told it does. But now I'm envisioning people at the kitchen counter, and they've got like 8 bottles, and they're popping them all the time, and they're doing all the your typical stuff you do in a flu season, right? D, B, C in a multi, but the idea of a manufacturer being able to kind of like come up with, hey, this is one specifically for Matthew, different from Dean's. Matthew doesn't get enough sunlight, he's working his tail off. Dean's down in Mexico, all that stuff. So we're seeing that just booming across the board. Revive has this health, beauty, and wellness index about what people are searching for. And, vanity and cosmetics went down last year, and skincare and health and supplements just through the roof. Continues to climb. It's not so I don't see it going away. I mean, a lot of things changed in the e-commerce world. It really ignited things, and unfortunately it helped out a lot of the big players more than the small ones, like Walmart, Target, Walgreens, CVS, those, but that's temporary, I think. But so I think the timing is great, and with technology, able to kind of help people manufacture this, it seems like it's a kind of a perfect storm.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, and it wasn't before, right? It was a fantasy. It was a sort of waiting. What is going to happen? What a horrible thing that
it was like all hat no paddle. They couldn't execute on it.
Right.
I mean, I'm kind of obsessing on small batch stuff, but it could be any example that you've thrown out here. It's, you mentioned your dad. What's it like working with your dad, or a dad? For listeners out there, some people are in family businesses, but most of them aren't. How's that go? How's that work?
I mean, family businesses. I remember when we were raising venture money.
Yeah.
people would tell me, don't mention that you're a family business. I said, this is really interesting that family businesses were, for a couple thousand years, that's how things are made, right? It's like,
exactly.
It became,
they became non-cool in the conglomerate phase, but they're coming back. I'm sorry,
it's really
they
funny.
never went anywhere, but the appeal is coming back.
Yeah, I mean, what I find really funny though is that I hardly know any startup or growth stage companies that had co-founders that didn't somehow have a problem, and people fighting over these things with the different co-founders. And my father and I, not that my father and I don't fight, but my God, we've worked together. I worked in his company, and then I brought him into this. It's been a real journey to do sort of similar things over the years, and he's a great inventor, clever guy. I love it. I mean, I really do. We've figured out what each of us are good at and not as good at, and what we like and don't like.
Yeah,
it's been wonderful.
Very rare. It's a great story. How do you guys play in the big boy space? So I do a lot of advising for the NSF, which funds projects. Let's just take quantum and nanotechnology as one crazy category. I don't always understand what they're talking about in the meetings, but I do know how to help them scale, because that's what I focus on. But all the big companies are there helping us. IBM, Microsoft with Azure AI, and I mean everybody. Amazon, anybody that's got good stuff. Google's always at the table. How do you kind of play in that world? Because it seems like some of their stuff is competitive with you. Some of them even make hardware. Most of them don't, though.
Yeah, I mean, I rarely see. I mean, maybe we're competitive for NSF dollars or something, but I don't. Maybe I should be working more to get that money, but it hasn't been a real key part of what we have done. But I've been involved with industry coalitions. So I was founding member of the Quantum Coalition. I did a congressional testimony. Actually, I know that, and boy, when they ask me to do that, they want to keep it at a very simple level, I think, when it comes to quantum computing. But yeah, so I've been involved with that. I'm involved with the Nanotech Initiative. So I do. Normally, when I do any type of lobbying or stuff like this, or speaking to Congress, it's much more educational to try to bring up an industry that we can serve more than sort of directly competing for those dollars for us. But I think it's important, certainly, not just, we talked a bit about educating industries to say there is a new way of doing it, but it applies for government, maybe even more so.
Yeah. Do you see some, so it seems like some of them might be partners. I know all the software guys are potential partners and channel guys, but some of the big guys, who knows? Sometimes you're competing.
No, we want to partner. We partner with NVIDIA on things. We partner with, I rarely think about competitors. I generally think about who can be a partner.
How about innovation? You seem like a good innovation outlet for a lot of these. I call them BFSs, the big fat slow guys. I'm talking about your customers. The Fortune 100s.
I don't call them that. They're our customers. Come on.
The BFSs. It's just more of a Kellogg term, because then we help them figure out how to be more nimble and agile and work with people like you. But it's more about innovation. For instance, jazz. There's a lot of parallels between what you do and your music and your literary and your acting and producing side of your brain to kind of orchestrating innovation. Any good tips for the audience on how to think that through?
Well, it's hard to give tips to other people on this, because what works for me seems very strange. This field of free jazz. I know you're a musician. We just talked about that.
No.
But
that title.
Not all music is the same. I studied more traditional music, but free jazz is this incredibly fast thing where you're using a different part of your brain. You're improvising. You're working with the group. You're taking in you do this thing where you close your eyes before you play, so that you're very, very attuned to noise. So there's actually some neural recruitment, they think, from the visual cortex to the auditory cortex part of the neocortex. And what's interesting about that is it's the opposite of the way we generally do planning, and in business. And I think both are important. This sort of rapid experiment and trusting your gut, because it's all you have at that moment. that we do when we play. But at the same time, you have to make sure that it's very hard. So your fingers have to be almost automatically know where you are, without thinking about it. So you're developing a muscle memory at the same time. So, this is, I like to pack my day very tight in one part of the day and be very open in another part of the day. And I think that there's something to that. The pack part is I'm jumping between things and seeing how I can play one thing off the other. And then the rest of the day we see what happens, or I have time to respond to emails, or I think that there are some good parallels to jazz. I don't think of it often, but I think it certainly influences.
Yeah, especially piano, because you're almost sometimes playing two songs at once.
Absolutely.
Versus like sax, you're just playing them, you're just kind of on the core, or bass.
Yeah.
You're on one, you're on one vibe. Fascinating stuff, Matthew. Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it. You've been listening to Matthew Putman, the CEO of Nanotronics. Hopefully I can come and get a tour there sometime. It'd be great.
Oh, anytime. My God, yeah. We'll jam.
Sounds great. You've been listening to Dean DeVias on the Reboot Chronicles. We'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us.
Great. Thanks, Dean.